I wanted to talk about something in this first video that is making a huge difference in my life, and that when practiced, can create almost instantaneous changes in my self-image, my energy level, and outlook. Very simply, I want to talk about kindness. Welcome to Vita, COLITUR. I'm Lynn Morgan-Rosser. This is the very first video I'm putting out, so thank you so much for being here. And I'd like to give you a quick note about the format. Every episode will focus on a topic, which will sometimes contain excerpts from interviews I've had with some brilliant artists and creatives I know, or it might just be me, like today. There'll also be a creative expression of the topic through something like poetry or story or music or a combination of those. And at the end of the video, I'm going to give out a challenge related to the topic, both practically and for any creatives out there who want to join in, artistically as well. I wanted to start with kindness, which is the place where our greatest vulnerabilities can be met with one of our greatest strengths. As much as the world can break us and tell us that we're flawed for that breaking, we have within us the capacity for something that can initiate the healing of our cracks, can help put us back together, stronger and more beautiful than we were to begin with. Like the Japanese art of kintsugi, where broken pottery is glued back together with lacquer and a precious metal, creating streaks of gold or silver or platinum along the wound, we can use the art of kindness to recreate ourselves, transform our brokenness into beauty, and strengthen our sense of wholeness and self-worth. Personal transformation and development often grows out of times of brokenness. For me, it has been a lifelong challenge to pick myself up, glue myself back together, and keep going. I think it's rare to come across something that can so quickly, 1, reframe my mindset and allow me to shift into the headspace where I can make positive changes. 2, help me to keep going with the positive habits I'm working on when I bump up against triggers or circumstances that might derail me. 3, allow myself to repattern old responses that don't serve me. 4, allow me to fundamentally restructure my relationship with myself. And 5, create a ripple effect. I can fill up my internal reserves of kindness so that I have a greater ability to share kindness, compassion, and love freely with others. So in the process of creating the content for Vita, COLITUR and trying to chart a clear path through the vast amount of information, skills, themes, experiences, theories, etc. that I want to share, I butted up against a lot of my ongoing challenges. Self-doubts and fears, procrastination, flitting around from idea to avoid settling on anything. And of course, there is the obvious fact that I'm just a normal, flawed human being like everyone else. Knowing this, it made it difficult to step out and say anything, much less create a YouTube channel. Imposter syndrome raised its ugly head, and I had to overcome that too. So did overwhelm. It is a lot to create something like this. Not all of the parts of this process are things that I'm skilled at. So there was that mountain to climb as well, and it took a lot of leaning into and self-discipline to keep at it. Most importantly, I had to allow myself to be vulnerable. I wanted to bring authenticity and some depth to my work and to you. In the middle of wrestling with all of this, I discovered something that in the past I had believed and had even had incredible brief experiences with, but had never really incorporated into my life as a practice in a regular, conscious, intentional, or meaningful way. I came to this epiphany that I could completely change my internal, emotional, and mental landscape within a few short minutes or even seconds. And the cool thing is, whenever I find myself in the dark, which of course, being human, I absolutely do, I have this practice right there waiting for me as soon as I become aware of my own negativity. I can also do it proactively throughout the day to reinforce a positive mindset. I just have to remember and choose to do it. So here is my self-kindness practice, the 7 steps I use to transform my internal emotional and mental state. Step 1, clearing. To begin, I pause my thinking with 3 deep abdominal breaths, placing my mental focus on my belly. This breathing and focus allow me to let go of the thoughts in my head and concentrate on the physical sensations of the breath. It short circuits my mental chatter so I can give myself a clear space, a gap, where I can begin to choose different thoughts. It's a basic meditation breathing technique, and I'm going to post a separate video with a super quick workshop on abdominal breathing in case that would be helpful to you. Step 2, create an image of compassion and find the feeling. Imagine a single precious image that symbolizes compassion and love to you. It could be anything that reminds you of that feeling, a lotus or a rose blossoming in your heart, a place where you felt deep peace, love, and compassion, a beloved pet, or a look of love from a dear best friend, a family member, something like that. If you have difficulty with visualizing, then get an actual picture to look at for a moment to remind you of that feeling. I continue breathing several more abdominal breaths while I pull this image up for myself. Doing this further resets my thinking. It also gives me an anchor that I can easily recall during the day that's associated with this whole practice of self-kindness. So when I think of this image, it helps to instantly pull me back into the feeling of self-kindness, compassion, and love. Step 3, ask the question. What would my truest, best friend ideally tell me to support me in this situation with kindness and love? What would I tell my own best friend ideally in this situation? That's it. Those are the questions to ask from whichever perspective feels best to you. So ask yourself this question and allow the answer to come to you. Step 4, speak words of self-kindness. I say things to myself mentally, but it's okay to do it out loud in a safe space if that's what you prefer. The goal, again, is to be your own best friend. I tell myself all the kind and encouraging things I would say to someone else that I really love and I want to see succeed. Use an internal voice that is supportive and encouraging, not indulgent or permissive, just genuinely kind, with the highest possible degree of love that I can muster. You can even imagine the voice of a loved one speaking these kinds of words to you. It's different than an affirmation. It's more conversational and directly speaks to whatever the situation is. There's also a self-soothing technique I sometimes add where I place the opposite hand on each shoulder and stroke down my arms, like I'm giving myself a hug and comforting myself. You know, it feels kind of vulnerable to even talk about doing these things, which is interesting to me. I think I still have some internal resistance to being kind and gentle and supportive of myself, which just means I need to keep doing it until I know that I deserve it and that I'm not letting go of self-discipline or being overly indulgent with myself by treating myself with compassion and kindness. Step 5, gratitude. After doing the previous steps, I allow myself to feel good, to be grateful for the kindness I showed myself. I let it fill up my whole being. Now, from this new perspective, I can usually keep going and make the best choices from those available to me that are most aligned with my long-term goals and vision. Step 6, revisit the state of kindness. Throughout the day, I dip back into this state whenever I become aware of negative self-talk, get triggered by negative news or something difficult happening, or when I find myself wrestling with choosing a comfortable but bad habit versus choosing a healthy new one. And step 7, anchor the practice. To anchor the practice as a whole and ensure that I do it every day, I'm attaching it to my morning rituals, which include the successful exercise practice I've managed to develop into a habit for the last several months. So find an anchor point in your day that will allow you to take 5 minutes or so to do this. It also helps to write about your experience with the practice in a journal, so consider doing that as well. It doesn't take much time, but it is time well spent, and that can really change your entire day, your entire outlook. Well, it felt strange to talk to myself like this at first, but being kind to myself truly helps me make better choices, ones based in my own best interest and for my future long-term goals. I can reset myself for success rather than making choices on autopilot or impulse that can hold me back and keep me from reaching my goals. I admit that I don't always go to the practice of kindness first thing when maybe I should. I still get triggered by stuff happening in the world or in my life, and in the moment, I forget that I have tools that would reorient my thinking, or I get caught up in some drama that I really don't need to worry over or that I don't have any control over anyway. But the more I do it, the more automatic it becomes. Doing this practice doesn't mean that when difficult, challenging, or bad things happen, I just shut them off. It means that when I need to act on something that requires my energy, kindness, empathy, and understanding, I'm much more likely to be able to act positively and with a clear head than if I hadn't done the practice. The goal is never perfection. It is always improvement. The more I pull myself back to a healthy and kind mindset, the more I create the pattern for my success and build the neural nets that make it more and more likely to choose this state. Just like weaving a cloth, adding a new strand may not make a noticeable difference right away, but if I keep adding strands, eventually a new pattern and even a whole new cloth will emerge. For me, this practice has been life-changing. I can go from being in a state of fear or negative self-talk to releasing it and returning to whatever I'm doing with a totally renewed mindset. It's been really amazing, and I'm working on it every day. If you sincerely try this kindness practice, please let me know how it made you feel in the comments. I would really appreciate it. And if you're still with me, and you haven't already, please hit the like button and remember to subscribe. And next up, poetry. A big part of Vita COLITUR, which stands for Creating Our Lives is the Ultimate Art, is looking at life through the lens of creative arts. Again, in future episodes, I will be adding in viewpoints and great information from artists that I know and have interviewed, musicians, writers, and creatives who have unique perspectives on the how of Vita COLITUR. Things like how they cultivate essential qualities that let them manage and fulfill their creative lives, and how they find inspiration. I'm also going to share some of my own creative efforts. I have a poetry series I've added to over decades under the title Transformation. The last 2 poems I wrote were inspired by doing this kindness practice and how remarkably better I could feel in just a few minutes every time. Transformation, incidentally, is not something I consider to be a one and done kind of thing. It's a continual progression over time in the pursuit of my values and highest and best self. I've included these 2 short poems, Transformation 5 and 6, in this episode. The music is also my own for this episode, and it includes instrumental tracks from my EP titled Songs for the Night Field, which is available on all streaming platforms and was inspired by the novel The Night Field by Donna Glee Williams. And coming up after the poems is the first challenge. Here in my own skin, cycled into the pattern once again of spiral pain and hope's rebirth, where I seeded plots of salted earth in the tear-brine wilderness within of marshy moors, quicksand bogs, a wasteland of ghosts and monsters, of thorn and bloody claw. I walked alone, a stranger to my worth, forsaken, in grief, burdened and unknowing. How hard to believe. How simple the transforming. For now this once cursed ground has become unbounded paradise. I walk in sun or golden gloaming on moonlit ways under milky skies, soothed by gentle spoken breezes, chiming melodies with agape rhymes. Watered, nourished, a blossoming grace in a roomy field cultivated beyond time and cornered space. The forces that seemingly raged outside in a world of shadow and scourge, that once reflected face of mine, was all my tangled heart observed. Coarsely veiled as the mirrored bride, hiding her scar-shattered visage, her carving knife of inward-turned lies, engraving twisted missives. Yet here, in a mere evolutionary breath, by a turn of phrase embodied, risen from cocoon-wrapped death, my unhallowed, hallowed heart takes flight. I am a lotus garden of stars, of painted indigo skies, a labyrinth whose eye has found its sight, where gentle truth stands uncovered, with vows and phrases of love inscribed by the one eternal beloved. Up first is the practical challenge. I'd like you to get out your journal if you have one. If you don't, then now is a great time to get one. In fact, if you are looking to buy a new journal, you could come to lynnmorganrosser.com to my store there for Vita COLITUR, and there are a couple journals there to choose from if you are so inclined. All right, so here we go. I want to challenge you to do the kindness practice at least one time every day in a very intentional way. The full challenge will be written in the description box as well. So, A, write down how you feel each day before the practice. So I want you to write down at least one sentence about how you feel before going through the first 5 steps of the practice. Give it a keyword that is meaningful to you, like an emotion or color or something to quickly indicate your mood, like blue or angry. You get the idea. B, write down the image of compassion that you're going to use for this practice. What or whom do you see as being an anchor for this experience? It could be a particular person or religious figure or a symbolic image or a pet. anything that brings up that feeling of compassion in you. C, answer the question of what your best, truest friend would tell you in this situation, or someone that really wants you to succeed and that cares about you and your life. Or you could flip it and you could be the friend, and what would you say to your best friend in this situation? How would you support them? And what words would you use to do that? Write that down in your journal. All of the words that you would use for your kindness to a friend, or that you would want that friend to say to you. D, finally, after going through all 5 steps, write down how doing the practice made you feel. Give a keyword for this also. Did your keyword change from the beginning of the exercise? Were you able to let go of any negative self-talk and create a clean slate in step 1? Were you able to do the abdominal breathing? Were you able to bring up your image of compassion in a meaningful way? Could you speak kindly to yourself with love and encouragement? Did you use the arm hug technique? You don't need to answer all of these questions each time. They're just food for thought. So try this for 1 week. You can also think about step 6, which is to revisit the state of kindness during the day whenever you need it. And step 7, which is to anchor the practice. So to do that, you could attach the practice to something you already do. If you journal already, add it to that. If you meditate, attach it to that. If you have a morning or sleep routine, stick it in there. It'll be easier to remember to do it if you have a place to put it. A huge benefit of learning to be kind to myself, which is an ongoing process, and in addition to supporting me and achieving my goals, is that being in that state of mind really increases my level of kindness to others. When I fill my own well of kindness, love, and compassion, I end up having so much more to share. It's a self-reinforcing habit because it just feels good. Art challenge. If you're an artist or a creative, the second part of the challenge is to create a piece of art or a poem or something in your medium as a response to doing the kindness practice. Use the experience as a creative prompt. Let me know if something comes through for you. I would be really excited to hear about that. I'll put the challenge and prompts for the kindness practice steps in the direction box. And please remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons if this content resonates with you. I really appreciate your support. So thank you. I wish you a beautiful, kind, and creative time until I see you again on another video for Vita COLITUR.